Councillors, it's 10 past. Hope you're all back, and we've had a few moments to take care of whatever you need to take care of. We'll move on to item 11, which is the Greenacres Farm Supported Living Scheme. I invite Councillor Carroll, Portfolio Holder for Adult Social Services and Climate Change, to present the report, move the report and the recommendations to be received and agreed. Councillor Carroll.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present this report. I'm delighted to have been able to have brought this forward. It's a very much needed scheme. We currently don't have any of this specialist supported living accommodation for adults with severe learning difficulties in Shropshire, which means that for the small number of individuals that we do have, that we have a responsibility for the care of, we end up having to commission these bed spaces outside of county, which can in some circumstances lead to these people being sent hundreds of miles away from their homes, their families, their friends, their support network, which is not conducive to a good quality of life. So what we're bringing forward here is for 8 units, 6 of them 1 bedroom, 2 of them will be 2 bedroom units. And that will be at Greenacres Farm, which is a thriving day centre for adults with learning difficulties in a working farm setting in the North Shropshire countryside. Beautiful setting, and it already has a base of support there for these people. What they'll receive while they're there is 24-hour round-the-clock care. They'll have one-to-one support, and in cases where they need it, greater than one-to-one support. This works financially for the council. The business model stacks up. It will cost us far less to provide this service than buy the beds wherever in the country there are vacancies at the time we need them. But actually, the main reason for doing this isn't the financial reason. The main reason for doing this is that by bringing these Shropshire residents back to Shropshire to receive their care, we bring them back closer to their friends, their family, their support networks. It increases their quality of life. Now, I'm conscious of the time, Speaker, but there is one other aspect of this scheme that I'd like to bring to Council's attention, and that is the intent in construction. What we intend to deliver, how we intend to deliver this project, is that it will be a fully off-site precision engineered buildings. They will be, the groundworks will be done on site, but the buildings will be built off site in a factory. They will be brought to Greenacres once they've been assembled and installed to reduce the disruption to the local community. They will be built to Passive House standard, which is an exemplar in terms of sustainability and in terms of running costs. It's a really exciting and well thought out scheme. We've been engaging with the local member, with the parish council. We will be engaging with the local community more widely now if council approve this project. So I have pleasure in bringing forward recommendations 2.1 to 2.4 and hoping to receive council support. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. And is it seconded, Councillor Bardsley?
Yeah, thank you, Speaker. I'd like to formally second but reserve my right.
Very good. Well, I've thus far one councillor who has indicated to speak, Councillor Heather Kidd. Heather?
This is a really great scheme. I'm not going to speak against it. I can't see that there's anything not to like in it, and I have a resident here who goes to Greenacres itself now and has a really good and supported experience there. And wonderful quality of accommodation, better than actually most of the residents of Shropshire, I might say. So what I would like to know though is that we've always had great store by personalised budgets and people being able to choose. Do all of the people who come here to live there have to use Greenacres, or can they choose to go somewhere else for other experiences? And that's my only question, really. It is a great scheme and well done.
Thank you. I had nobody else indicate to speak. I'm looking at the Chief Executive just to see if anybody has slipped in at the last minute.
Nope.
No, in which case I will come back to Councillor Bardsley, who reserved his right. Councillor Bardsley.
Thank you, Speaker. Nick Bardsley, I'm the local councillor for Ryton and Baschurch, and this Greenacres scheme is at the southern end of Baschurch Parish. I want to commend the portfolio holder and Andy Begley and his whole team for the report. I want particularly to commend them for the process they've adopted and are now following. It's been clear from the start that they want to work in partnership with the local parish council and the local community. We've already had initial meetings. We had a very successful site meeting a few weeks ago, to which both parish councillors and I were invited. We're closely involved in the scheme. There will be a presentation, I think, at the next parish council meeting early next month, and neighbours will be taking part in that remote meeting as well. The buildings and the associated development may well not be where they appear on the site plan on page 13 of the feasibility report. I hope when the planning application is submitted, probably not until November, that it will be much closer to the existing farm buildings. There's a brownfield, if I can use that term, area just to the north of the existing farm buildings, which has two advantages. First of all, it's well screened, and the site plan shows a very open field which isn't well screened. But more important, Speaker, the site that we looked at the site meeting, closer to the farm buildings, is much more accessible for residents so that they can get to the farm buildings and take part in the activities. And that's envisaged in paragraph 1.9 of the report. I just want to finish very quickly, Chairman, by saying many councillors will have, in more normal times, on Wednesdays usually, bought eggs, rhubarb, other farm supplies as they've left Shire Hall or come into Shire Hall. Those farm supplies and those people who served you come from Greenacres Farm. I'm sure in time you'll be meeting some of the new residents at that same place. I look forward to that. I hope all councillors will. I hope very much that you will approve this scheme. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Back finally to Councillor Carroll.
Thank you, and thank you both for the positive comments that you've made. They're very well appreciated, and I'll make sure they get back to the officers who've been doing all the hard work on this. There are a couple of questions there which I can answer. Firstly, Heather, you asked whether using their personalised budgets, the residents of the proposed new properties would have to use Greenacres or could choose to use other facilities. The choice, as they are personalised budgets, is theirs. We would hope that they would at least in some way engage with Greenacres where they can, because the support at Greenacres is specialised to people with learning difficulties. However, they are not bound to access Greenacres Day Centre as an activity. In some cases, unfortunately, it just wouldn't be possible for them anyway because of the nature of their conditions. But the choice at the end of the day will be down to the resident whether they wish to make use of that service or another service. They are two separate services on the same site. Coming on to Councillor Bardsley, and I'd like to especially thank Nick for his support as local member. and providing the links that he has to the parish council and the local community. Just to emphasise what he said, the site with it, the location within the site in the feasibility study is purely illustrative for the purposes of bringing forward the business case. The actual site will be in the planning application when that is brought forward. We have taken on board everything that Nick and the parish council said about the suitability of the alternative location they proposed. In principle, provided there are no technical reasons why we couldn't use the field that they proposed as opposed to the one in the feasibility study, we are perfectly happy to accommodate the more local knowledge they have of the area and use that site. We have the project manager is meeting with the architects this week to discuss how feasible, how possible it will be within the budget to use that field as opposed to the one in the feasibility study. And I will, of course, keep you as the local member and the parish council informed as of the progress. I think that covers everything, Speaker, so I will ask for council support.
Thank you. Okay, well, as per some of the earlier debates that we had, there is no real dissent sensed by myself. So I would propose to accept the recommendations of this report on behalf of all of you. But if there is somebody who wishes not to, or wishes for it to be actually formally voted on, we'll say that by silence that everybody agrees with this. Are we happy? Good. Claire, you happy with that?
Yes, Speaker.
All right, good. We'll move on to item 12, and thank you very much. Portfolio report, communities, place planning and regulatory services. Please may I remind you that portfolio holder responses are for information only. Questions may be put to the portfolio holder on the work that they're undertaking, but as no decisions are taken on these items, no motions will be allowed. Okay, so I invite Councillor Gwilym Butler, the portfolio holder for communities, place planning and regulatory services, to present his report and move its receipt by council. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm sure this is a year that none of us will forget. And for me personally, I am very pleased to be here today to present this report to you in full health. It certainly won't be a year I will forget. I'd like to take the opportunity, firstly, to thank all the staff of Shropshire Council for the tremendous work they've put in over the last 6 months during the pandemic, and their flexibility to change. But I'd particularly like to highlight within my portfolio the roles that the staff of environmental health, trading standards and licensing have undertaken. And this has been to make Shropshire residents safe. It is safe when they go to work, it is safe when they go shopping, it is safe when they go to licensed events, and this has been well over and above the normal activities of these officers, and I have nothing but praise for them, with limited resources, I might add. The place plan officers have also been undertaken new duties with helping the distribution of the business grants. They are now back at their desks and are doing the normal work and rolling out the issues of the place plans, and I would urge all members to raise place plans with their town and parish councils over the next coming months, as they are live documents, and just to make sure that new things need to be added or things need to be taken off, new ideas, etc. And the place plan officers will be in touch with all members in the next month or so to move that forward. The report itself is very thorough. I am more than happy to take questions. If I have the information at hand, I will provide it. If not, I shall do so after the meeting. And therefore, Speaker, I move the report to be noted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We don't need a second on this, as we won't be taking a vote on it. I do have a question from Councillor Julian Dean. Councillor Dean.
Thank you very much. I'm wondering, Gordon, whether you're comfortable with the fact that it's proving very difficult to bring planning applications to committee from members. The example I'll cite is the part 2 of Weir Hill, where the Reserve Matters application, several councillors and community members put together a very strong argument that it wasn't in line with policies and where we're heading, but the chair of the committee refused for it to go to committee. I'm wondering if as that's in your portfolio, whether you're comfortable with the fact that we now, with only 2 committees, may be in a situation where we're not addressing some of the issues we ought to be addressing at committee.
Thank you. Have we got any more? Yes, we have. I'll take them all at the end.
Yep, and I'll bring you back at the end to answer the questions. Councillor Roger Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Welcome back, Gwilym. I know you've had some problems, and it's good to see you here, and also welcome your report and the area that it covers and the comprehensiveness on it. Just a few minor. Well, can I echo what Julian has just said about taking applications to committee? We are in COVID, but the committee is sitting, and I think if we got another six months or however many months it is, I think we do need to actually look at the number of reports which are going to committee and I use the word in inverted commas, allow them to increase, because there is some concern that a number of applications are not going to committee when the feeling is that they should. However, the questions I wanted was on page 153, empty homes. You say 1112 has been returned, 71 and 81 consecutive years. Numbers have increased, but how many in total empty homes are of concern? And I understand it might need to be returned in a written response. And also blue badge complaints. During the year, I've had a number from people with existing blue badges complaining to me about the length of time it takes to get them renewed. Is it a new national procedure, or is it the procedure that Shropshire Council has adopted? I am not sure. But again, thank you for the report, and move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Alan Mosley. Councillor Mosley.
I'd just like to echo what excuse me, what Roger's just said about the comprehensive, interesting, and I think mainly positive report that Gwilym Butler has presented. He does, however, allude to various parts to the problem of resources, and we all know about the cuts and austerity that's been imposed. But I think particularly in the term of this report, the COVID crisis has obviously impacted significantly, and we know that in the NHS and in public health, concentration on that has caused some diminution of services and provision in other areas. Is he satisfied, therefore, that all the services that he is responsible for have been able to manage in that environment of COVID, and that services that are non-COVID orientated have not suffered as a consequence of a lack of resources provided by central government?
Thank you. Councillor Heather Kidd. Heather?
Hello. Yep, sorry, unmuting. A couple of things that I'd like to raise. I'd like to actually congratulate the place plan officers for actually coming in to be our go-between. What would we down here have done without them? And they have been fantastic in the light of their local knowledge, because of course they were our community action officers in the past. Will we continue during phase 2 of COVID and possibly beyond, have them as much more of a go-between, because it has been incredibly useful, certainly to us in the southwest, to have somebody just to go to, and it would be great if they just had a little bit more clout to sometimes get the answers we want, so that we don't have to go to directors, because they've got a big job to do as well. And I would like to reiterate my frustration with getting things to a planning committee. I'm very concerned that what seems to be happening, certainly in part of my area, is many of the recommendations about building in the AONB are coming up with, well, it's not sustainable, there's no bus route. Well, we'll never have any building, no tourism, nothing if that's the case. So there seems to have been a shift on the ground of what we believe is sustainable in very rural areas. I would welcome thoughts on that. Thanks, Willem.
Thank you. Councillor David Turner.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd just like to ask the question of Councillor Butler, whom I welcome back in good health, whether he knows that on Tuesday the Southern Planning Committee heard 6 applications, and of those 6, 5 were ones which were in Lib Dem divisions, 4 of which have been called in by Lib Dem members. And is he aware that we get frequent complaints about committee determination not being allowed, but the evidence is rather different? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I've not had anybody else indicate, so I will come back to the portfolio holder to answer such questions as being presented to him.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Right, I'll start from the top. Julian, yes, I did take particular interest in the Weir Hill issue. Spoke with Ian Kilby at the time, and I know they looked at the situation at length, the senior officers with the chair and vice chair of the planning committee, and it was felt there was no material reason why it needed to come back to committee. And that mirrored with what David Turner has just said, you know, that we have to strike a balance here. However, if any member is feeling they are being mistreated or unrepresented, please bring it to my attention and I will take up the issue directly. Roger, I'll have to come back to you directly with the empty homes numbers. With the numbers that are in the report, the numbers that are actually monitored as being told about can be told about on several occasions for different reasons. So I will get an up-to-date report on that for you. In respect to delays on the blue badge scheme, I would imagine you're talking about the difference between a normal blue badge and a blue badge for dementia, for people who are suffering from dementia or non-visible criteria. In those circumstances, the application does take a lot longer because it has to be validated by 2 doctors. And the process, I believe, is running to the national norm. But if you have specifics, please come back to me and I will investigate for you. Alan, on resources, interesting subject. Part of the problem we have is we do have vacancies, but in the specialised area it is very difficult to recruit. Powys, Worcestershire, Telford and Wrekin, East Cheshire all have vacancies, so it is part of the problem. I will not walk away from the fact that during COVID that we have had to take an assessment of risk of where the officers should do their work, and there may be areas of less risk that we will have to catch up on. What I am pleased to report and to emphasise is the funding we've had from central government to provide us with 2 new officers under the Brexit Fund, and using those officers we have got our FSA, our Food Standards Agency reports are really coming back up, so that has been a great improvement. Heather, in respect to the place plan officers, it is a moving feast, and this world is forever shaping. I have a tendency to agree with you, and I'm hoping that the community and rural strategy will be coming to Cabinet in October, and as that is rolled out, I'm hoping that we will see a new Shropshire Council that will be across the whole county and be far more accessible for all of us. And David, thank you for reporting the Southern Planning Committee's responses, and I think that just echoes that I believe we're being fair on what goes to committee and what doesn't. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Well, then we will move on to item 13, which is the annual report of the 2019-2020 Communities Overview Committee. I would like to invite Councillor Cecilia Motley to present the report as Chairman of the Communities and Overview Committee, and to move that the report and the recommendations be received and agreed. Councillor Motley.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and I apologise for the fact that earlier I couldn't join the meeting because my audio went down. And I would just like to say how grateful I am to Christopher Roberts in our IT department for having got me back up and running again. This is at the annual report of the Communities Overview Committee. Members will probably be aware that as a result of COVID, we went from 5 committees down to 2. So my committee hasn't met since lockdown. So we're now looking forward to getting going again. This is, as you can see, I'm sure a very welcome brief report on the topics that we've covered to date and what we're going to be tackling going forward. The rough sleeping and the home point issues are particularly arising as a result of the disruption of COVID. And we'll be tackling those at an early stage. But our new work programme is going to be aligned very much with the Council's strategic action plan. And we'll also be scrutinising thematic priorities and respond to emerging issues as they come up. So we want to have a bit of flexibility in the programme so that we can tackle issues quickly, which members or indeed the chief executive or directors may feel need an urgent look at. So we'll be meeting in October and tackling rough sleeping. We want to look at how the Everybody In scheme worked, and also, since that's come to an end, and also the proposals resulting from the applications for the Rough Sleeping Initiative Fund. We want to see what's happening in that area now that that funding has come to an end. And Home Point is a fairly natural extension of that. We want to see how well the Home Point scheme is working, and what alterations or additions can be put into it. We'll have an important meeting, particularly in November, where we're going to be looking at the flooding response arising from the very bad flooding that the county endured in January and February. And then, as you can see from item 3, a list of other issues which we'll also be tackling over the next few months. So I think we've got a busy programme ahead, and we're looking forward to it, and we'll be launching very soon. Thank you, Chair. I don't think I need say anything more than that.
Thank you. Councillor Viv Parry has indicated she has a question for you.
I just want to say thank you to Celia for getting us back online. This is a very important committee, I feel, and she always runs it very well. I would also like just to say that I'm glad we're doing something about flooding. I'd like to thank the officers for everything they do to do with flooding. I have had a lot of people who have got their money, who live across the road from me, who were very, very badly flooded the last time. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, nobody else has indicated. Councillor Motley, you have the right of reply.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to thank Viv for that and say that her input is always welcomed and will obviously be very valuable when we get round to discussing the whole aftermath, the flooding and the aftermath of that. And also I would just like to place on record my thanks to Daniel Webb and Tom Dodds for their support over the period for the Communities Overview Committee. It has been invaluable. But other than that, thank you very much. That's it, Speaker.
Thank you very much. OK, we will move on to item 14, which are the notices of motion. The following motions have been received in accordance with Procedural Rule 16. I would just like to say before we kick off that a request has been made with regard to motion 5 from Councillor Andy Boddington with regard to pavement parking, that be deferred in his absence until the December meeting. I have agreed to that. So we will start with the first motion, which has been received from Councillor Kate Halliday and is supported by Councillors David Basmer, Julian Dean and Roger Evans. Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm really pleased to be putting forward this cross-party motion. The Prime Minister has said that he wants to have a golden age of cycling, and we'd like to support that vision. He is interested in a travel revolution, which involves not just cycling actually, but also walking. And he has announced £2 billion worth of funding to back this up. And we would really like to see Shropshire grab as much of that funding as possible. Obviously, new finances are difficult at the moment, and it would be great for us to really develop our cycling and walking infrastructure. The announcement was followed by some documents, including gear change, a bold vision for cycling and walking, and also some Department for Transport guidance, LTN 120, on cycling infrastructure. Now, councillors may be pleased to hear I don't intend to go into too much detail about that document, but in a nutshell, what it's saying is that we have got things wrong in the past with cycling infrastructure, leading to wasteful spending on money. We've all seen the cycle lanes painted on roads that suddenly stop, which haven't helped cyclists, nor motorists, nor even pedestrians. This new guidance sets out evidence-based approaches that will encourage cycling, and obviously this can help with a number of the council's key priorities. People will cycle and walk more if we have better cycling infrastructure. The health will improve, well-being will improve, congestion would improve, and we would also help with reducing emissions. And the reason we're bringing this up is because we have recently put in a bid for some of this funding. We put in a bid for £2 million, but it appears that part of the bid didn't actually follow the Department for Transport guidance, and that was around calling for a shared pedestrian and cycling lane, which the guidance is fairly critical of, except for in some exceptional circumstances. And we've probably all had constituents talking about how difficult it can be to have a dual cycling and walking path. And I realised there wasn't much time for the council to put that bid in, but we really want to make sure that future bids, and the government is asking that all bids actually comply with this Department for Transport the guidance. All future bids will conform to that, and that we get behind the Prime Minister's gear change and support cycling, both cycling and walking. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, just before we go into some debate, there has been a proposed amendment from Councillor Julian Dean, which I'm sure you've seen and read. Are you happy to accept that? Would you like me? Sorry, you're on mute. Councillor Halliday.
Yeah, Speaker, can I just confirm that if I accept that, it then incorporates into the whole motion, or can I'd rather have a separate vote on the amendment.
Okay. Sorry.
Mr. Speaker, yeah, that's absolutely fine, but we need a seconder for Councillor Halliday first.
Okay, seconder for Councillor Halliday, and then we'll move to the amendment.
Councillor Vasmer, I'm seconding the motion.
All right, thank you. Okay, so there has been a proposed amendment from Councillor Julian Dean. Councillor Dean, would you like to talk us through your proposal?
Thank you. Is there not an opportunity for that to be displayed on the screen?
No.
Okay, then I'll explain it briefly. So the amendment, and I'm speaking in favour of this motion as well, by the way, but the amendment adds to it. So in proposing the amendment, I'm supporting the main motion, but also asking us to take seriously implementation of both the government's gear change and the note LTN 120, which in turn is designed to support the National Cycling and Walking Investment Strategy. I'm sorry, there's going to be a few acronyms here. A key part of this is that we should have a local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, colloquially known as an LCWIP. We don't. Together with the fact that we don't even have a local transport plan at present, there's a real danger that we will be unsuccessful in any bids under the investment strategy. and that even if we adopt LTN 120, it will remain on the shelf because we don't have any money for schemes to apply this to. So I'm proposing that we should also be developing an LCWIP. A further crucial element to having an LCWIP is that this should then make the local plan much more fit for purpose when it comes to transport, because LTN 120 is explicit about this. In section 14, to quote, where local authorities have developed a future cycling network through an LCWIP, it will enable them to seek meaningful and worthwhile contributions from new developments rather than ad hoc and isolated measures which do not enable active travel journeys beyond the site. The second part of the amendment draws out the implications of Principle 17 from the note, to quote, perhaps the single most important tool to promote cycling may be the humble bollard, used to prevent through traffic. Such low-cost modal filters can increase safety by reducing traffic whilst retaining cycle and pedestrian access. So I'm proposing that we actually investigate some pilot schemes for low traffic neighbourhoods. Using the term low traffic neighbourhoods clarifies that these measures are not just about town centres, they're about making neighbourhoods more accessible to everyone. Again, going back to the 8 to 80 age group, as the paper puts it. With increased home working and neighbourhood living in our larger towns going on right now, needing to be supported and encouraged, there may not be that many places where these schemes apply in Shropshire, but now is the time to trial them. With continued emphasis on home working and continued reduced capacity in public transport, we should grab the bull by the horns and give people the incentive to make these short journeys by foot and by bike. So I support the motion, but I'm asking that we also develop an LCWIP and that we look for some pilot schemes for low traffic neighbourhoods. That's the content of my amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. And is that amendment seconded by anybody? I'll just give it a minute so that anybody might be able to remember the switch.
Councillor Vasma here, I'll second that.
Okay, so it's seconded by Councillor Vasma. Right, well, I've had two people that indicated to speak to the first piece, Peter Nutting and Viv Parry. Excuse me. Do either of you two wish to speak to the amendment, or should we move straight to the vote?
I don't wish to speak to the amendment. It was the main motion I wish to speak to.
Very good. Councillor Parry?
I don't want to speak to the amendment either. It's the main motion.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Councillor Heatherkit, you've indicated you wish to speak to the amendment.
No, I want to speak to the
right.
main.
We are on the amendment at the moment, so I will put you on the list for the main piece. But please just indicate if you wish to speak to the motion. If not, we are going to move to the vote. Okay, if we could have the voting screen up for Councillor Julian Dean's amendment, I would be grateful. Thank you. We'll get a few minutes longer because not enough people really have voted yet, and it's relatively close. Please vote now if you can.
Mr. Speaker, there have been 16 votes in favour of the amendment, 33 votes against the amendment and 4 abstentions. So the majority have voted against this amendment.
Okay, that amendment has therefore not been successful. So we will move back to the original notice of motion. I have 3 speakers on this currently. Councillors Peter Nutting, Viv Parry and Heather Kidd. Councillor Nutting.
Thank you, Speaker. It's Peter Nutting. Basically, I support this motion. We would always support a motion that's promoting the work of the Prime Minister, and I think we all agree that, you know, cycling is good. I do actually have a bike which I do use from time to time, and from here at Copthorne getting into Shrewsbury is very easy. It's downhill all the way. The trouble is it's uphill coming back, so it takes me about 12 minutes going in and about half an hour to come back up the hill. But yeah, why wouldn't we want to support walking and cycling? So yes, I think the Conservative group will support this, and I hope that will help the debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Viv Parry.
I'd also like to say that I support this motion. I get more emails about cycling in Ludlow than anything else because we don't have enough cycle pathways. Ludlow 21 at the moment are very keen that I keep getting in touch with the council and asking when we're going to have more infrastructure put into the town. So I support this very much so. And I do know how you feel, Peter, because Ludlow, of course, is on hills. And even though I'm quite surprised when I see all these wonderful cyclists trying to get up the hills, they really know how to keep fit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Kidd.
I also support this, but would like to try and make sure that when we're looking at this as a council, we remember the rural areas and in particular the national cycle routes. I have one that comes down the B4386 and along the B4499, which is incredibly dangerous. And just last week there was an accident on it because of 4 cyclists riding abreast on bends with no verges at all. So actually we need to start planning for those national cycle routes and other areas in the rural parts of the county, please.
Thank you. I've got Councillors Hannah Fraser and Councillor Alan Mosley. Hannah Fraser. Councillor Fraser, are you on mute? Okay, I will move to Councillor Alan Mosley and come back to Councillor Hannah Fraser in a few moments. Councillor Mosley.
I'm just pleased that Peter Nutting has decided to make reference to Boris Johnson here, and glad to see that he calls for all-party agreement on this. I hope he also adopts that principle where there's good ideas and things that take the country and the people of Shropshire forward. When Labour are putting forward policies such as this in the way forward. It's good news that we can reach agreement on this. The only problem is, though, that I just wonder what resources are going to be available to fully implement the proposals within the gear change and within the local implementation of it. That's the nub of the matter, and that is where we might have some disagreement and some discussions that are more lengthy in future, and actually getting these proposals implemented in an urgent and sensible and resourceful way.
Thank you. Councillor Hannah Fraser, are you back with us?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'm fully in support of this motion. I'm a cyclist and a motorist and would like to see many more journeys done by cycle and much safer spaces for cycling. And I would essentially urge the council to show some real imagination in terms of cycling infrastructure as they put new schemes in. It would be tempting to simply spend money on painting more white lines on the roads in terms of refreshing old cycle schemes. and I think essentially if we want people to get cycling in Shropshire, you have to plan for if the route is not suitable for a 9-year-old, it's really not acceptable. You know, it has to be safe, it has to be easy to navigate, and it has to be sufficiently away from cars and other traffics for inexpert cyclists to use it. And I also wondered if any thought has been given to using old railway routes. For example, Shrewsbury up to Pontesbury, you can actually open up some really excellent cycle routes, and those sorts of projects actually a real game changer in terms of suddenly creating commuter routes and leisure routes and, you know, fun routes that families can go cycling on. So I think a real bold vision for a really good infrastructure in Shropshire is well overdue. So yeah, please, not just a refresh of existing cycle routes, but a real vision for, you know, getting more people cycling in much better spaces and infrastructure, please. Many thanks.
Thank you. Right, Councillor David Vasma next, who seconded and reserved his right. Councillor Vasma.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I have to say I'm delighted by the support that we're getting for this motion. It's absolutely wonderful, and I hope that, particularly, I hope that Councillor Davenport is listening to this, and I'd like to request that, given the support, universal support for this, and various ideas which have been mentioned during the debate, like railway routes and more resources and the rural areas, I hope that Councillor Davenport might be willing to have a meeting with the proposers of this motion to discuss how we push it forward, because I don't want a situation like we had with the school streets where things seem to drift. I hope that after this meeting we can really push this one forward. Thanks very much.
Okay, and finally back to Councillor Kate Halliday, who proposed this motion. Councillor Halliday.
Thank you. Yeah, I am likewise delighted in the overall response we've had to this motion. Really pleased. To address Councillor Fraser's point, I think that's going to be really important. The government are calling not just for a kind of like small upgrades, which is what our bid, our recent bid was. They're asking for imagination, and the more money, the more imagination we get, the more money we are likely to attract. And I do understand, I did manage to speak to Steve Smith last week to discuss this, and we hopefully will be getting some money out of the bid we put in, but I think it's likely to be significantly less than the amount we actually submitted, and it is probably because of that lack of ambition and also needing to comply to the government regulations. So I'm really pleased about this. I would say part of getting money in the future is going to depend on what Councillor Dean actually suggested, that there were some areas who already had local cycling and walking infrastructure plans, and I suspect we'll find out that they were the places that did really well. And so I think there's also a lot of community groups out there, and again I spoke to the head of highways about this, who can do a lot of the footwork for us actually, and so I'm hoping that we can also develop strong links with community groups as well. But I'm really pleased with the response, and I hope you'll vote for this motion.
Thank you. Okay, now it does seem to me that there seems to be across the virtual chamber support for this. So unless anybody indicates otherwise, I'm going to take it that we're all in agreement with this. Okay, well, I'm going to say then that that motion has passed. Thank you very much and well done. We'll move on to the next motion, motion 2, which has been received from Councillor Roger Evans and is supported by the Liberal Democrat group. Roger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's on your agenda that Andy Boddington was going to second it. My understanding is it will now be Heather Kidd due to Andy not being able to attend today. But yes, this motion. I note that this subject is also to be discussed by the Cabinet on the 5th of October, and publication of the officer report going to it is therefore due to take place within the next 5 days. However, unlike majority of other councils, there seems to be no mechanism yet in place to allow members to contribute and comment on these vast-reaching proposals made by government. There is cross-party in the LGA and elsewhere concern about what these proposals contain. So there's no politics involved at all. And please, I'm not doing this as a Lib Dem. I'm doing this as a concerned councillor. And it is to allow members to express their views for council, maybe to say to the cabinet, hopefully we can endorse a report, although we haven't seen it yet, but it can go that way. But that's the reason for this motion. There's no facility at present provided for members to engage, have the proposals explained and consulted on their views. The proposals being made are radical and will change how planning applications are dealt with. The proposals include putting forward 3 categories for how land in the local plan will be identified. All land will be identified as suitable for growth, renewal, or as protected areas. Local plans which identify land as being suitable for development will, when the local plan is adopted, and the white paper goes through as it is now, of course, but when the local plan is adopted, they will all be deemed as having outline planning approval granted. Communities will have no further say on this and only be permitted to comment when the so-called reserved matters come forward. Local plans will in the future, again in the white paper, expect to be adopted within 30 months, cutting down on the number of consultations and so the input from both members and the communities. Proposed is a new single infrastructure levy would be put in place and only be payable on completion of the building. This would replace the present 106 and community infrastructure levy. All community consultations would be streamlined. Timescales for determining applications would be made more firm. Failure for the council to adhere to them would enable the applicant to have their fee paid returned. If an applicant takes their application to appeal and wins, then their planning fee would be returned. It also proposes lifting the small site threshold so that any development below 40 or maybe 50 houses would no longer need to contribute towards affordable housing. Disaster for Shropshire. It also sets a target for new housing as 300,000 per year, which according to many would increase the numbers. And if I look at our present local plan and the new local plan, and the new local plan especially, our new local plan represents about 1,400 houses per year. If this goes through with the targets that are set, it would increase Shropshire's target to around 2,100 houses per year. Disaster, I think, for our rural county. These are just some of the radical proposals contained in the white paper. There are numerous others. I think, hope, all here today believe in democracy and allowing communities to consider and so make comments on planning applications when they are submitted. To agree that this council and members are in the best position, make decisions. Please let officers hear your views today or separately, but on these proposals, and let's agree that the proposals listed by the government at present are not acceptable to us, and also that we include asking all our MPs to oppose these proposals. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Now that's being seconded by Councillor Heather Kidd. Heather, do you wish to speak now, or?
I will reserve my right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I've had one councillor so far indicate to speak. Councillor Robert Macy.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm speaking in my role as the portfolio holder for planning and strategic housing. strategic planning, sorry. Roger, I welcome the comments about it not being a political item on this one. From our perspective, obviously they have been described as sort of the most fundamental reforms to the planning system in a generation, and they are wide-ranging. I mean, I note in the motion that you talk about the existing planning procedures as currently administered by our team allow for local democratic control over future development and give local people a say in planning proposals. I slightly go back to the points that were raised earlier in this meeting, but I'm hoping that comment holds through those. From my perspective, Shropshire's got a strong track record of delivery in housing in recent times, and we do have a healthy 5-year land supply, which has been delivered through our current local plan. If I'm honest, the wording in the motion takes a slightly sort of scattergun approach to this paper, and there's a number of other key issues in there that will affect residents in Shropshire. So from my perspective, I mean, I'm happy that the government is recognising things that we've raised previously about raising the quality of design and things like that we could be supportive of and are looking for. I will accept that there are points in this national approach that may cause us difficulties in Shropshire, and we may want to challenge those, and that's fine. That's quite right for us to do as a council. I've previously responded to members who have raised this, and I think they've raised it to all members, and I've said we will consider these and come back before we do any response. As you've referenced, we've already got a date in the forward plan for this to come to Cabinet on the 5th of October. That's obviously a chance in a public forum for members and the public alike to look at this issue. And precisely as you're saying, we will publish the papers for that soon. That will set out our draft response. We think it's right that we're looking at the response to the actual 26 questions of the consultation rather than just a general report. And that will be there. Members will be able to see that. Obviously, the mechanism for that is officers and myself are quite happy to receive comments from members based on that in advance of the meeting. We may want to consider things in advance of the meeting that we can bring to it. Obviously, members have the opportunity to attend the meeting and speak on those and raise concerns. So from my perspective, we've already got something in the diary. In terms of lobbying the MPs, we do have a meeting in the diary with the MPs. That will take place after the Cabinet meeting. So we will be able then to take to them our position and ask for their support in lobbying. They have been supportive of us in the past, and I would hope they would be on this issue as well. So all the elements in this motion, really, in terms of having a full look at it, a debate on it, what the position is, what should we submit, are already in place. So in my mind, I'm saying I don't think we need this motion today. I'll be voting against the motion today because I think it's quite specific and it's quite broad brush in saying we should oppose, urging us to oppose proposals. I think, in honesty, the response will include a mixture of supporting the positives that we do want to see, and then challenging those elements which in Shropshire might cause us difficulties. So I thought I would speak earlier in the debate rather than later, just so that members know that's my position on it, and we have got those measures in place should they want to take part. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Nutting.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's Peter Nutting. Robert Macy said a lot of what I would say, so I'm not going to repeat it. But basically, this motion is very woolly. It's just almost saying we're against everything, and there are good parts of what the government's trying to do. And I think we need to be a bit more sophisticated in our response, and that will happen at Cabinet. I think that's the best route for it. So I think this is a badly worded motion. I accept the aim of it, but you really are just, Rob Macy called it scattergun, I'd call it foggy. I just don't think it's clear enough on what you want to oppose and what you want to agree. So therefore I'd suggest this motion should be voted down and let Cabinet do its work and do its work properly. Thank you.
Okay, well, I've had nobody else indicate, so Heather, you reserved your right.
Yes, thank you. And Robert Macy's completely right. There are some good parts in it, and being on the LGA, we've been looking at this very, very carefully, and as Roger pointed out, this is a cross-party approach, and actually there are 3 pillars to the whole thing. I'm not doing this as a Liberal Democrat either. I'm actually trying to make sure that development still happens in the rural areas and it delivers the housing need that we require. So those parts of the planning white paper that are particularly anti-rural need to have a very strong response, including at the present time, if you have a development of 10 or less, you don't have to have affordable housing. Well, this paper actually wants to increase that to between 30 and 40, in which case I've had no affordable housing in my division now for 10 years, more than 10 years, getting on for 12 years. This white paper will make sure that unless it was an exception site, it would never, ever happen. I think what I'm sad about is that Robert has been really good at bringing papers back to a group, both a housing group and a local plan group, that look at these things and have an input. This white paper has not come near us as a group, and I would be really grateful if we had the advantage of seeing that paper before it goes to Cabinet. We're all on Zoom or Teams or whatever you want to do it with, and just to have some sort of input, certainly from rural members, because this paper from government has certainly not been rural proofed, and the measures on SIL will actually make delivery of affordable housing in the countryside even worse, or even to housing need, which, I mean, I want some open market housing, but 2 and 3 bedroom houses. I don't want lots of big ones, and it does have implications for our local plan, where I've got development sites coming forward at the moment for sites of 25 or 20. We get nothing from for the community. So I ask, on top of all of this, that actually this motion may appear woolly, may be foggy, but it's actually raised an issue with everybody that is now in the open. And we would really benefit from having some sort of input before it goes to Cabinet. And it is a rural issue. It is a huge rural issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Disappointed by the response from some of the councillors here. It is woolly. It is a scattergun. It is a very big paper, and it would take pages and pages to try and put everything down. There are some good parts in it, and I've highlighted some of the parts that concerns me, and I think concern the majority, if not all, the councillors here. But if one looks at the motion, it says take part in the consultation in the planning process and make representations against the proposals as outlined in this motion. So it's accepting there are some good parts. It's saying that those parts that I've mentioned, and I think there will be universal support to say those are of concern to councillors, rural, wherever. And we do need to make those concerns visible and ensure the MPs are with us on this. So yes, scattergun, woolly. Yeah, that is how it's got to be if we're going to get support, rather than get really, really specific about it. That's what the report to Cabinet will be, and later. But I think councillors, and the more publicity this council can actually give to what's happening and being proposed in the white paper before the cut-off date, parish councils need to join us, if that's what their wish is, to say this is what may well be coming down the line to you. We need to let the government, MPs, everybody know the parts of this white paper we like and the parts that we do not like. So yes, I want support for this, and I will be looking at the report when it comes through. And I also echo Heather Kidd's comment. I'm on this working party which looks at future planning processes, and we do try to take all the politics out of it. Have round table, come forward, so that we don't have an argy-bargy, because that doesn't solve anything, and in fact it gives many developers sustenance that we are engaging and wasting time doing it. We need to be together, and we need to make that story heard down in London. So please support it. Let's take it forward together, and I will be supporting the council, but really, we need to emphasise the council is there with the cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, as ever, we will need to take a vote on this because there are views that don't seem to be particularly aligned. When the box appears, please cast your vote whether to support this or whether to vote it down. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, of those that have voted so far, there are 18 votes in favour of the motion, 32 votes against and 0 abstentions. So the motion fails. Okay, the motion has failed. Thank you. We will move on to the third motion, which has been received from Councillor Ruth Houghton and is supported by the Liberal Democrat group. Councillor Houghton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd just like to bring this forward to the Council to consider, given that the position in relation to home working versus returning to the workplace has changed again this week as the country responds to the increase in COVID-19 infections and new cases. This obviously causes uncertainty for both employers and employees who've had to work from home, sometimes in very difficult circumstances, such as managing childcare, technology glitches which we all have from time to time, lack of space, isolation and limited opportunities for collaboration. So I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank officers for their flexibility, commitment and willingness to overcome these difficulties. So the motion as it's tabled, I'd like to propose this so that we can fully understand the longer term implications for the workforce and the strategies that are required by this council to support officers as home working continues to be a requirement. Thank you.
Thank you. And is this still seconded by you, Councillor Evans?
Chairman, I think it's Councillor Kidd was supporting this. I think.
I was, yes. I wish to second it and reserve my right, please.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I've had so far Councillor David Minery and Councillor Hannah Fraser indicate. Councillor Minery.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm responding in my capacity as the portfolio member who has, amongst other things, HR in his portfolio. and I read this with some interest, and I did think long and hard before coming to the conclusion that actually I'm going to ask people not to support this, and I'm going to explain why in some detail, if you'll bear with me, but I won't need the full 5 minutes. I must stress at the outset that this administration values and supports its staff as much as any other administration would, and I personally am absolutely determined to make sure that our most valuable asset is supported, whether they're working at home or whether they're working in the office. And we have already put in place surveys. Managers are in regular contact with the staff. We're going actually further than the motion suggests. Health and safety issues are foremost in our consideration. Does everybody have an appropriate working conditions at home? If not, what can we do to alleviate that? What cost pressures are staff experiencing because they're having to heat and light their homes, particularly as winter approaches? And we're now obviously into another 6 months of working under these conditions. Mental health I've already talked about. So this is all in progress, and to think that people are happy or think it's okay to wait until December before a report is produced, to me is way too late, and that's the principal reason why I'm not in favour of this. As I say, considerable work is being done, considerable work is continuing to be done, and I'm hoping that by November Cabinet there will be a detailed report on all of the implications and what we intend to do to alleviate any hardships or difficulties that any members of staff have. And I just finish, Speaker, by saying how grateful I am, and I know colleagues in Cabinet are, and I'm sure the whole Council is, for the way in which our staff have adapted so quickly and so readily to the new conditions, the way they have happily supported the new arrangements in working from home. And it really surprised me, actually, that such a substantial percentage of them, upon being asked, felt that they were working better and more productively in their home environment than ever they were in the Shire Hall. So I would like to assure members that this is well in hand, moving at a faster.
Sorry, David, we seem to have lost your voice.
Sorry, I inadvertently pressed the off button. I do apologise. I was only summing up anyway, that just to reassure everybody that we have got this under close observation and control, and to say I do hope to be producing a detailed report at the latest in November. So for those grounds, I think it's pointless to approve this, because it's actually going to be contradictory to the work that's already being carried. So I urge members to vote against, but I do appreciate the sentiments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fraser.
Thank you, Chair. I really just wanted to speak about home working, really in regard to the Council's plans for Shire Hall. I'm somebody who works in an office environment, and so have been at home since lockdown started, and many of the people I know are in similar environments, and I think there's a real shift coming in that initially a lot of people felt working at home was a boon in many ways, as the pace of life slowed down a bit and you could focus on work in a different way, with perhaps commuting and other distractions no longer present. But as time goes on, and as people were starting to get back into the office and re-engage with their colleagues in a real rather than a virtual way, I think people were starting to actually really appreciate that amount of contact. And that now that we're all being asked to work from home again, I'm noticing that a lot of people are starting to feel really quite glum about that.
Have you finished, or have you also muted yourself? Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can again now, yes.
Yeah, no, just got really bad reception, sorry. So I think that people are starting to actually feel that they value interaction with their colleagues in the real world rather than just in the virtual world. And as the months go on, and that they can find themselves not leaving the house, being in the same environment all the time with very little change. I think that what was a really positive experience working from home for many people can start over time to become a much less positive one. So I would just urge real caution. It seemed very knee-jerk reaction to me that the minute lockdown was called almost, Shire Hall was going to be put up for sale because it was no longer needed. I just think many employers are going to find that efficiency, staff well-being, all those sorts of things start to fall off as time goes on with a lot of home working. I'm somebody who's worked from home for a long time, and after many years thought actually it is much better to have some human interaction during the day. So that's really what I wanted to say, and the reason that I'm supporting the motion really is that I think council would be very well served to have more information on how staff are feeling about working from home, and that the decisions about Shire Hall should be taken in the light of those. Thank you.
Good. Councillor Alan Mosley.
Thanks, Speaker. I'm in two minds about this motion, actually, because at the last two group leaders meetings with the SNT team I've had raised questions about this, and particularly the last one. I was very satisfied with this response that Andy Begley gave about the actions and the discussions that they were having, and the proposals that were coming forward about dealing with the issues that were raised in it. And I hope that we see those promises or those suggestions coming forward in the very near future. I would just make one point though, and that nowhere in this motion or in any of the comments received from David Minnery have the trade unions been mentioned, and negotiations, consultation, involvement of the trade unions in all this process is absolutely essential. And I'd just like assurance from David that that is going to happen. So I think this motion is useful in terms of its sentiments, but I think it has been overtaken by events, and we'll await and see the results of the actions of officers and the actions of David as the cabinet portfolio holder.
Thank you. Colin Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just like to also mention that with the decentralisation from Shire Hall, the council is looking at creating a series of hubs across the whole of the county to enable staff to hot desk and to gather probably closer to where they're actually living for more convenience. And I do totally understand, you know, the need for them to get together with their teams at time, because you do lose that connectivity. I'm also very hopeful that there will be the opportunity to work with partners, and in places like Bishop's Castle at the Enterprise Centre or at Clibbury Country, we may have opportunities to have hot desks there as well. I would like to see that forthcoming. So, and this will very much mirror the rural and community strategy once it's adopted by the council, to be a county-wide strategy for the whole of Shropshire and all its staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I've had nobody else indicate, so I'm going to go back to the seconder, Councillor Kidd. Heather?
I think what we've heard here is actually that this is a very important motion. It's a motion about people's well-being, and it's highlighted the fact that actually the communication from senior management and the cabinet about how we're looking after our workforce has been not very good at all. Actually, all of the home working issues that I've heard about, and I support completely Hannah Fraser's issues in that I have a daughter who's been working at home since the very beginning of this, it becomes very isolating after a time. And so the point in this motion about the short-term plans and the long-term plans are very important, because as Gwilym has just said, we all know that you get a better outcome if people are sparking off one another and they actually feel that they're part of a team. Working at home begins to destroy that team, and there is a very good balance between the two. So I would still like you to support this motion, I might also say that I would be really grateful if we put the hot desk back into Enterprise House, because we've had continual issues about the council wanting one and not wanting one and so on. So that would be a huge step forward for all of us if that was the case, and hubs out around the council would be fantastic. But again, this communication is the issue. So could I ask you to support this, but actually start thinking about briefings online for members in the future? Thank you.
Thank you. And back to the original bringer forward, Councillor Ruth Houghton.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you for all the comments that have been received. But I would draw to your attention that the last 2 points of the motion around the long and short-term impact and plans, whilst may not be being addressed by the current work, do need to come back to council for those views. I take Councillor Mosley's points about how important it is to have that sort of formal consultation with trade unions as well on all those developments for staff. But the final bullet point, the impact of home working on the council's ambition to become a carbon neutral authority, that really does need to come back to council, and so that we can see the impact in the round, not just on staff, which is very important, but the impact on how customers feel and the impact on our sort of approach to carbon neutrality. So I would urge members to really give that some consideration and vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, councillors, once again, the box will appear on the screen. It's now in your hands whether to support this motion or whether to reject it. I would remind members as they're voting, please switch your microphone off if you are not being invited to speak. I can hear sighing and clicking.
Mr. Speaker, of those that have voted so far, there are 14 votes in favour of the motion, 34 against and 1 abstention. So the motion falls. Okay, I think you all heard that. Thank you very much. We will move on to the fourth motion, which has been received from Councillor Nigel Hartin, and once again is supported by the Liberal Democrat group. Councillor Harting.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. In putting this forward, I was trying to design something which would be suitable for the council to express its overall support for as the widest range of people as I possibly could, who have been working hard through the current difficulties that we've been going through over the last 6 months or so. And in doing so, I didn't want to just make the council thank its own staff and health and care workers who we've been all supporting over this time, but also widen it slightly to include, for example, broadcasters, for example, who have been very, very important, particularly for those people who have been shielding during this difficult period. Our broadcasters such as Radio Shropshire, the BBC nationally, and indeed more locally here in my neck of the woods, Sunshine Radio, have been very, very key for those people who have really had no other access to news during that time. So it was an attempt to try and incorporate those, and also to find some way that we could all come together as a council to express our support for everybody that we could. Now, it's become clear, obviously, from the amendment that you will have already received, that I've somewhat failed in that, and I've failed to include overtly town and parish councils and the voluntary and community sector, which I think I should have included, and thank you very much to Councillor Gwilym Butler for pointing that out in your amendment. I think those should be included. I still would like to move forward with this motion, because I think particularly including people such as the broadcasters, and I think also local media in this would be important. And if I can, with your agreement, Speaker, and that of my seconder, perhaps propose a slight change to the motion to try and take account of this point. And so in the third line, after health and care workers, I'd like to insert town and parish councils, the voluntary and community sector, broadcasters, local media, so that it would read, this council applauds the exceptional efforts the council staff, health and care workers, town and parish councils, the voluntary and community sector, broadcasters, local media, and people in all professions have made to support and strengthen our communities. And I think that will cover everything, in the hope that we can get widespread and unanimous support within the council. So with that hope in mind, I'd like to propose the motion.
Thank you very much. And I understand that is being seconded by Councillor Ruth Houghton. Is that correct?
Yes, Speaker, seconded, and I reserve my right. Thank you.
Okay. Well, there is an amendment, and obviously you have said some words on that. So I'm going to go to Councillor Gwilym Butler. Gwilym, you have an amendment to this, and you've heard what Councillor Houghton has had to say.
Thank you, Speaker. I do understand the ethos of what Nigel's trying to approve here, but however, I thank him for putting in the town and parish council, the voluntary community sector, but I have great difficulty in thanking the broadcasters, because I think generally the broadcasters have lighted up the fear and anxiety in a lot of people in the way that they have delivered a lot of the media attention over the COVID pandemic, and that's my opinion on it. And I don't think there has been a very balanced view from a lot of the media, and I think they have created more anxiety and mental health problems, and they have certainly stopped a lot of people who required critical medical attention from visiting doctors or hospitals because of their fear over what has been portrayed. So I still have extreme issues with broadcasters and those of other professions. There's an awful lot of people, professional people, who've been furloughed and working from home, and I feel it's a little bit too broad. And I do understand Nigel's ethos, but in the second sentence, and there is a typo on mine, it should say of Shropshire, not have Shropshire. But we noticed when we did the consultation on the community and rural strategy, one of the key issues for Shropshire are people living alone and being isolated. So saying friends and families can be a kick in the teeth to those people, because they haven't got friends and they ain't got families. So I just wanted it to be all inclusive to everybody of Shropshire. So I would move my amendment as stated, with the issues that I've actually stated. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Is that seconded?
Yes, Speaker. David Turner. I'm pleased to second that.
Are you going to reserve your right or speak now?
And I do reserve my right, yes.
Okay, well, we will move forward with the amendment. I've had two people indicate thus far, Councillors Alan Mosley and Simon Harris. Can I ask if you both wish to speak on the amendment, or whether you wish to speak on the original? Councillor Mosley.
As far as I'm concerned, Speaker, it's both.
Okay, well, we're debating the amendment at the moment, so focus
on... I'll speak on this and then I can speak on the other as well, presumably, if necessary.
You can, yes, if we get that.
It seems to me that while mentioning the list of those that we're thanking, there's one vital element within the whole scenario that's somewhat missed, and that is the role of the local community-based groups that sprang up throughout the county, and I'm particularly aware of those in Shrewsbury, obviously, that provided invaluable services and gained a great deal of support from the local people, and helped very many hundreds of people who were suffering during the worst phases of the lockdown. I know in Shrewsbury that many local members were involved in organising those, and certainly many more in participating. And I know the enormous amount of interest that was gained throughout the town and the area. I presume that has been replicated across the county. In Castlefields and Ditherington, for example, I was inundated with over 100 volunteers. In fact, very quickly I had to close the books on volunteers at the outset, and many hundreds of people were helped in ways that were ongoing throughout the pandemic and still continue, because ongoing relationships and community cohesion has been encouraged and developed as a consequence. So please, in the amendment, if that gets through, and in the main motion, whichever happens, please insert reference to local community-based groups in the text to recognise the massive contribution and the value that was given from them.
Thank you. Indication from Roger Evans. Roger, are you speaking to the original or are you speaking to the amendment?
Speaking to the amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Right. Okay. If members, if they could just make that clear when they go through the chat box. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm disappointed at Councillor Butler's reasons for putting the amendment and highlighting the media. At times, we all have differences of opinion with the media and how it's reported, but we do have a really realistic and bustling and a media that reports the stories as they see them, not as we see them, as they see them. And to signal out that he does not want the media to be thanked in his amendment, I think is disappointing. Everybody who has participated in the crisis where we are now have been doing it because they believed in doing it as it is said, as it is done, as it should be delivered in the communities. And please, I want a media that is totally independent, that reports the stories that they feel need to be reported, and not as per what politicians or big business or anybody else reports it. They are independent, they report the stories, and I want them free to do it as they wish, and they should be thanked. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Okay, well, I will go back then to Councillor Nigel Harting. Nobody else has indicated. Councillor Harting, you have the right to reply on the amendment.
Yeah, Ruth Hagen was my seconder and had reserved a right. Did she come in?
I'm not sure she does on the amendment.
Oh, on the amendment. Okay. Thank you very much, Speaker. Then, well, thank you to Councillor Alan Mosley. I think he's made some very good points there, and indeed, I'm sure in most members' local areas, local community-based groups have been really active, and they certainly have in my area, and I'm sure they have in most other members. So I'm perfectly happy to include that within my motion. Perhaps I can suggest that I include that after on the second from bottom line after friends, so that it reads that families, friends, local community-based groups and volunteers. And I think that will cover the points that Alan Mosley quite correctly made. I will be disappointed that if we don't include broadcasters. I'm a little bit unsure of quite why Councillor Butler is so anti the information that's been sent out by broadcasters. I would say again that I know of people who have been shielding over the lockdown period, who have relied upon their local broadcasters for information, and it's been very pertinent and very to the point and been very helpful. So to explicitly exclude them from thanks, I think, is unfortunate, and so I would like my motion to be supported, please, by council as widely as possible. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm now going to go, therefore, back to Gwilym Butler. And David Turner first, who seconded the amendment. David, you withheld your right.
And I don't intend to speak now. I'll let Gwilym Butler deal with this. Thank you.
Okay. And I believe now we close indicating we move to the vote now. So
that's correct, Speaker.
All right. So we are moving to a vote on the amendment put forward.
Do I get to speak, Chair?
No.
No.
Okay,
No, you don't.
thank you.
The amendment put forward by yourself, Councillor Butler. So the box will appear. You can support the amendment or you can not support the amendment. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, of those that have voted so far, there are 29 votes for the amendment, 17 against and 2 abstentions. So therefore the amendment is carried and now becomes
the substantive motion. Okay, so we will move, and I'm sure Claire will correct me if I'm wrong, straight now into taking a vote on the substantive motion, which is actually the amendment which has just been accepted. So,
Mr. Speaker, could I just raise a point? I just wonder whether or not Councillor Butler, as the mover of the amendment, might be prepared to accept some of the proposals that, for instance, Councillor Mosley suggested to improve his amendment.
All right, a little bit out of step, but Councillor Butler, would you be prepared?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I was going to raise exactly the same point. It seems
I've just raised it, Alan. Thank you. Councillor Butler.
Yeah, thank you. I'm more than happy to accept the ethos of Alan Mosley and to insert after the voluntary community sector and other voluntary bodies, or whatever wording you find suitable.
Well, I did
Alan,
say local community groups, didn't I?
Yeah, local community groups. We'll put that in if we may, please. And I'd also, on response to the media, I would just like to actually say I'm all for a free press. And my major concern is I have seen so much on social media, and everybody I speak to on the high street are now turning off news. They are turning off mainstream news because they no longer wish to.
We're just discussing the wording before we take the vote. I'm sure you can share your reasoning with other councillors afterwards.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So if you could just read the motion now, please, so that everybody knows what they are voting on. With the
yep.
A few extra words.
Bear with.
It's not what's on the board. That's why I'm asking you to read it.
Yep.
No, Mr. Speaker, it's not what's being seen. It's the amendment that has been carried.
Yes, that's what I said.
Right.
Extra words in, so I've asked him to read it so councillors know. Ignore what's on the board.
Right.
And read out, please, what with the extra few words that Councillor Mosley has suggested, the substantive is now. Thank you.
This council gives thanks to everyone who has worked tirelessly to help our county during the COVID-19 epidemic. This council applauds the exceptional efforts that council staff, health and care workers, town and parish councils, the voluntary and community sector and local community groups have made to support and strengthen our communities. This council in particular recognises the immense contributions and sacrifices the people of Shropshire have made during one of the most challenging years of our lifetime.
Thank you. I think that takes it on board. The amendment was passed with those few extra words. It's now become the substantive. If people would like to vote, it will appear in front of you now.
Mr. Speaker, there are 39 members that have voted today for the amended motion and 1 against and 4 abstentions. So the amended motion by Councillor Butler, the substantive motion, is carried.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. We will then therefore move on to item 15. Given that the final one, as I said earlier, has been removed till the December meeting, which is questions from members. There are 7 member questions which have been received in accordance with the deadline set out in procedure 15 from the following councillors. This is for a supplementary question only. Councillor David Vasma.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the basis of the response, I calculate that the highways consultant was on a salary of £240,000 a year, which is more than the chief executive receives. So I was wondering, you know, what value do you think is there a value that the highways consultant brought, which is equivalent to that type of salary? It seems to me quite an outrageous amount of money is being spent. And I think there should be a review of how we engage consultants in the future.
Okay, portfolio holder, do you have a response to that extra question?
Yeah, sure.
Members could keep the questions brief, that would be good.
Yeah, sure. You probably know I did an interview this morning on Radio Shropshire to answer the same question, but the answers I've got here. The highways consultant worked. Have you got the answers? Sorry, or have I just got them?
Well, it's a supplementary question. You give an answer to the supplementary question. If you
yes,
can't provide an answer now, then email
give
it.
you word for word of the savings that the consultant made. Firstly, perhaps. Would you like me to email everybody, or would you like me to read out what I said on the radio this morning?
Councillor Vasman, would you be happy for Councillor Davenport to email you those savings?
Yes, I'll be quite happy for Councillor Davenport.
Okay, I'll send it out to all members. I'll send it out to all members.
Question 2, pedestrian safety. Again, it's Councillor David Vasman. Do you have a supplementary question in brief?
I think there was one on the highway structure, but the next one was on the highway structure, I believe.
Okay. I've got in the question here that it says third. It's still the second. It's still the second restructure, but it's still having time to go through HR, legal, and of course we've got a new
assistant director now who needs to be cited, who is now cited on this before it gets put into signed off. So it's the second still, not the third.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Heatherkit, do you have a supplementary question?
I do indeed. As the council at the present time, and highways in particular, never give an idea of when any of these safety works may happen, which doesn't reassure communities. One, could they take into account the fact that the police do not always register every accident unless they've come out? And two, that they could consider re-white lining junctions where the white lines have been missing for the last 2 years, just to do something in the interim. And the new assistant director knows exactly which junction I'm talking about, where we are going to have a terrible, terrible accident unless somebody puts even the white lines back.
Excuse me. If the assistant director already knows this, please make sure it's on the customer service centre and it's been registered. But I can assure you we are getting to these places a lot faster than we used to be getting to them. So I will talk to the assistant director and make sure this happens as soon as possible there and elsewhere in the county.
Rubbish. Thank you.
It's not happening.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, you've had your supplementary. I don't want to hear comments from members out off the cuff like that. Both of you, thank you. Councillor Roger Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do have a supplementary, but I hope all information that's given to members as a result of these questions will become part of the minutes for the history and to be referenced back. My supplementary. In the original contract with contractors, the KPI have been proved as not fit for purpose. Methods being used and hence payments were being made for work well below what many considered standard and were payments made for substandard work. At the scrutiny meeting held on the 8th of July, the following was supplied as being completed. And it's, to quote, a proposed new suite of KPIs to improperly focus key areas of attention and importance has been developed for incorporation.
Roger, can I ask you, sorry to cut across you, Roger, can you just ask the question rather than quote former minutes?
Yep. In the scrutiny meetings, it's been said that the KPIs work was completed in June of this year. Is the information that was given to the scrutiny committee, which says that all work has been completed, is that now incorrect? Looking at the answer that's been supplied to say it's still under negotiation. Scrutiny were told.
Again, Roger, it's still to be signed off by the new assistant director. It's put in place to be able to hold Kia to account and for us to be able to pay them what they're towards their KPIs. But yes, it is yet to be signed off.
Thank you. Councillor Pam Mosley, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, thank you. I'm going to have to quote briefly from the answer. The last paragraph, the second and last paragraph, says that officers are beginning to undertake a review of our highway maintenance strategies to ensure that resources are better allocated to support contemporary priorities and reflective of national best practice, working closely with our supply chain to continue to identify opportunities to derive better value for money from the budgets we do have available to ensure that we can increase the amount of activity that we are able to undertake. If you take out the words highway maintenance strategies from the second line, this paragraph could relate to any one of the council's areas of activity. Try substituting adult social care or children's services here and you'll see what I mean. Therefore, portfolio holder, can you please advise what this actually means with regard to bringing the existing cycling path network up to an acceptable and safe condition as autumn is with us and winter approaches, so that we can all enjoy a golden age of cycling? Thank you.
Yes, Pam, I'm certainly with you on this one, but we do need more funding. We have bid into government for a lot of funding towards cycling and walking, and as soon as we get that through, we will be pressing ahead. But I can't deny we are behind with this. purely financial reasons, but we will be, as soon as we get finance through, we will be pushing forward. Thank you.
I look forward to that. Thank you.
Councillor Ruth Houghton, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, Speaker. The response makes reference to a programme of employment land being ready for investment. When will the portfolio holder provide a forward plan for this that demonstrates the actions across the county with proposed timescales for delivery of this land? Thank you.
Portfolio holder, do you have an answer for that? Or do you need to email one out?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we'll get a written response for that, if that's okay.
Thank you. And finally, question 7, again, Councillor Ruth Houghton, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Speaker. In response to the question, how will the council monitor the effectiveness of the media campaign that's mentioned in the response?
Thank you, Councillor Houghton. Councillor Leslie Picton here, Portfolio Holder for Culture and Leisure. It'll be monitored through our customer service centre and also from the feedback that we use. Basically, Ruth, we will be asking people to come back to us through our portals that we use. Sorry, I'm being a bit vague because I can't remember what it's called. But as these media campaigns go out, they're all targeted and they have target codes on them. So any feedback we get via social media or Twitter, etc., those codes will come back to us. But I think actually the most important thing is, you know, we've got 74 members across the county. Any feedback that you get needs to comes back to the team as well. The campaign, I know I'm meeting with you and Councillor Kidd in the future. You know, we can target campaigns to the areas if we know exactly what is required, and the guidance from local members is really important on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 16, which is for the exclusion of the public and the press. I move that in accordance with the provisions of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 and paragraph 10.43 of the Council's Access to Information Procedure rules, that the public and press be excluded for consideration of the remaining business. Is that seconded?
Yes, I'll second that, Mr. Speaker.
Right, unless anybody says differently, we won't go through the rigorous process on the machines. I am content if everybody still in the meeting is content to take that as a vote to uphold that. Anybody disagree? Okay, then we will, I guess, no longer be live.